Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where today's most exciting solopreneurs share their startup stories. They also deliver tangible strategies that they would implement personally if starting their business over today. Each episode is a startup masterclass. Make sure you take notes.
This is Kevin Pruitt with Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Victoria Bennion. Victoria, thank you for joining us on Rising Tide.
Thank you very much for having me, Kevin.
It makes me very, very homesick to hear your accent because the UK is our second home. It's our adopted home. So thank you for just taking the time today. And if you'll share a little bit with our listeners about Victoria.
Okay, so I live in Dorset in England. I have 2 children and I run a podcast booking agency where I book experts as guests on podcasts to help them increase their visibility and grow their brands.
So nobody just wakes up one day and decides to be a podcast booking agent. So how in the world walk us through that transition you just had? How did you start out at, you were working at, some high street shop and then I don't want to do this anymore.
Sort of. It's been a really wiggly line, to be honest. So I guess I always loved storytelling. That's where it begins. At school, I loved English and I loved reading. I read everything that Enid Blyton ever wrote.
Yeah.
So my parents were quite concerned when I was insisting on going to boarding school, like Mallory Towers and, So I guess as I grew up a bit, I thought writing, yeah, okay, what can I do with writing and reading? And I thought I'll be a journalist. And, my dad said, I'm not sure that you're really suited to that. I know that you like writing, but I'm not kind of sure that that's right for you. But, I was quite headstrong as you can be at sort of when you're young, can't you? And so I did it anyway, or any age. Yeah, right. Any age. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. So once I'd done my degree in English, I went off to London College of Printing, it was called then, which is London College of Communication now. And I did a periodical journalism course. And kind of throughout that, I thought, this isn't quite what I thought necessarily it was going to be. And also, a lot of magazines, or mainly, were based in London. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to be sort of tied down to London. So when I finished, I was quite lucky. I got a job in Salisbury, which is, it's about an hour and a quarter from where I live now on the south coast. Did you go to Salisbury?
Yeah. For those that don't know, it's kind of near Stonehenge.
Yeah, that's right. It's got a really lovely cathedral. Yeah. So I worked on the diocese's paper, really, which was a monthly publication. And it was really lovely for a year to be right by the cathedral. And it was quite a soft option for journalism. But there wasn't much progression. And so I started to look at communications because I thought I can still use my writing skills, but maybe do newsletters and things. So that's when I moved to Guildford, which we talked about. And I worked for the regional assembly and I worked in their communications team. And as part of that, there was quite a lot of PR involved. Mm-hmm. And they put me on some PR courses. And I remember the instructor saying, one day, any of you here, you could have your own PR agency. And I remember thinking at the time, that would be quite good, be your own boss. I quite like the idea of that. But at that point, I was kind of on that corporate track, I think. And it felt like, I don't know if I can break out from that right now, or, I've got bills to pay. And it's a nice idea for one day. So, but the regional assembly wasn't really for me, and they didn't last that long anyway. I didn't really enjoy writing about kind of sewage and pipes, and I think it didn't really fit. And then a job, and I was quite homesick actually. Much as I liked Guildford, I really missed being by the sea, mm-hmm. which is where we live now. So a job came up in Bournemouth at it was the Arts Institute, the Arts University, I think it's called now, a 3-year contract. It was kind of more creative, but it was managing their communications for a 3-year project of a lifelong learning network. So I went there for 3 years. And then I went to London. I moved to another arts college and looked after the communications for the student services at University of the Arts London. Again, really loved the creative side and looking after all of that. But I think I always wanted to sort of be my own boss. Both my mm-hmm. parents I've always been self-employed, and I think I just kind of, it really grated having to ask for holiday permission, and being on kind of someone else's time frame
schedule.
and
Absolutely.
that's it. And then when I was expecting my daughter, we decided it was time to come back to the coast, because we lived right in central London, opposite the Barbican, near St Paul's Cathedral. Lots of cathedrals in the story. So it was lovely, but I was really sick too, and I just really needed to come home and have some fresh air. So I freelanced from the moment I had her, but it was kind of general marketing, social media I did, and I began to get author clients and small businesses, and I really enjoyed that. And then I was trying to enhance my skills. How do I serve authors better? Actually, was the kind of the thinking. And I took a book marketing course by Tim Grahl about, I think it was 2018. One of the strategies that he suggested authors use was podcast interviews as part of their book launch. And I had a couple of author clients at the time and a couple of small businesses. And I said, hey, how about we try this alongside the other things we're doing? And it worked so well for one of them, she was a psychologist. So she had a non-fiction book, and she used her podcast interviews to sort of fill her calendar with new clients.
Right.
And I thought this is quite powerful. And then I met somebody else through Tim Grahl's group who was looking for help with podcast interviews, and he worked in leadership. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll work. But yeah, we can give it a go. And I worked for him for about a year, and we got him booked on about 50 podcasts. And again, he had really great results. And he keeps coming back now, even so for different kind of things he's promoting, because he finds it just so useful to make part of his content marketing strategy, I think.
Right. But you were originally talking about PR, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you were
originally about
doing
PR
for
yeah.
authors, and it just kind of niched down to
so it
kind of
niched
the
down.
podcasting space.
Yeah, that's it really. That's why I
So
kind of thought I'd focus on the one thing.
So the booking service. So I mean, as a podcast host, I mean, it's always an interesting kind of dynamic between a booking service and a podcast host.
Yeah.
How many? What's your success percentage on, like, if you're going to reach out to 10 podcast hosts, how many of those podcast hosts are going to say yes?
Well, that's so interesting, because when I started, the first time I tried, I would have said to you probably 1 in 10, because I really refined the method since then. I wasn't so tailored, but these days what we do to improve that rate is really talk to the client about who their target audience is, and then really research the relevant podcasts, and reach out to the ones that you think are a good fit. Really take time to look at the episodes that you've already created and what they could add to the conversation.
Right.
So it's a win for everyone. So I would say now it would be more like 5 and 10 or even higher.
Yeah. That's a high percentage.
Yeah.
That's a high percentage. I don't think I don't think I accept 50% of the ones that are sent to us, but
it very
it's
much
getting
depends.
closer, because I think we can even train the booking services, like, we write back, it's not just a no. I mean, it's a no because of this reason. And this is what we're really looking for, but we started reaching out to agencies too. So, I mean, I've even proactively reached out to agencies and said, look, I'm looking for these types of guests. If you know about this, and I've gotten some response that way as well. But I'm curious, is it so? Obviously, it wasn't just an overnight transition. I mean, was there a point that you just started? You woke up one day and thought, wait a minute, I'm spending all my time booking podcasts instead of doing these other mediums.
I actually joined a sort of a business coaching service called Atomic, and you get a one-to-one with one of the owners. And so on my one-to-one, I was saying, I do all these different things. I do marketing, I do social media, I book podcasts. And he went, right, that's far too much. If you actually want to grow a business, you need to define your offering to people, focus on one thing that you're going to offer, come up with a package and just do that one thing. Don't be doing, because I was kind of doing, well, if you need social media, I can do social media. If you need more of a launch plan, we can do that. So it was really, that made me think about it. He said, what do you enjoy most? And what do you have most success with? And I said, well, podcasts actually, because I really like reaching out, meeting hosts and talking to them. And, I really enjoy pushing clients, or helping clients share their message,
Right.
And so, oh, sorry, did that come through? Anyway, yes. So that's how we kind of got to where we were. It was really a push from a coach to focus.
So what has been when you first started kind of niching down just to podcasting, how long did it take to kind of grow, a stable of clients, or did you pretty well have those and you just kind of set up, look, I'm not doing these other services. I'm only doing this service for you.
That's quite hard actually to say no as well, isn't it? When you're trying to transition and you don't really want to turn down the work, but you know that you have to if you're going to have the space to grow. So I had 2 clients, and I told it, one of them only wanted podcasts really, and I just told him that this was where the focus was going to be. I felt it was the most valuable thing to be focusing on, and he was fine. And my other client, actually, where she was getting so many results from it, she was happy to sort of go down that route. And then I found that as I was contacting hosts, I had a couple of podcast hosts say to me, oh, what services do you offer? I would like to be a guest to another podcast to promote my business or my own podcast. So I got a couple like that. And really, when I let people know what I was doing, I changed everything over. There were other colleagues I knew who said, I've got clients that I do maybe Facebook ads for who have been asking about podcasts. I think it's quite it's like a golden time, isn't it, for podcasts? Right. There's a lot of people thinking about it now. So, and also then I thought, I should try the strategy myself. I talked to clients about it, as I should use it as part of my content marketing. So as I've done that, I've had a couple of clients come from just being interviewed.
So how do you find how do you niche down the podcast that are you just searching Apple Podcasts? You looking at Spotify? Are you just doing searches for specific subject matters?
All of it really. If somebody comes to me and they're an author, when I have a strategy meeting with them to start with, I'll say, where does your book fit on the shelf? Which are authors in your genre? Or if it's business owners, we talk about, okay, who's in the same area as you, who's in your niche? And they give you a place to start. You can start by Googling those people, those authors, and the word podcast, and see what that brings up. And that can help you start making your list to kind of start refining by. Or like you say, the categories in iTunes, listen notes, really looking at the roundup sometimes, when I'm looking for leadership podcasts, you can Google top leadership podcasts. It totally depends on the clients. And I find they come to us for different reasons. Like one of our recent clients, so she's got contacts in marketing, but they're friends. And so she doesn't want to approach them or her team to approach them herself because, it might be awkward. So she'd rather an agency does it. So, she came to us with a specific list, quite a solid idea I'd like to be pitched, but, I kind of don't want anything to do with the pitching because I don't want to ruin our relationships. So there's lots of different reasons and different ways that we approach it.
Well, as a potential guest, if I'm trying to get on podcast, I would much rather you reach out and receive a no than me reach out and receive a no, because there's even the self-esteem factor. You're like, if I filled out the form, the guest form or whatever, and they tell me no, I'm gonna think, oh, what did I say wrong? But if you do it, I may not even know you pitched 10 different podcasts and 3 said yes.
You're
just going to tell me the 3 that said yes.
Yes, absolutely. Here's where you need to show up.
Right. So we want to guard our clients' psyche a little bit. So for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's quite putting yourself out there. It's it can be hard, can't it? Especially to start with.
So I'm curious, how did you find Rising Tide Startups?
I was searching you because your businesses, aren't you, and startups and small businesses, and that must be what I searched.
And just popped up.
I think it was on iTunes.
We think we're a big deal, but I don't think don't normally pop up on like a top 10 list or anything like that. So because there are what over 1 million podcasts now. So
yeah,
it's
there are.
a
There's,
very
I think
crowded
it's 2
space.
million.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. Though not when you think of YouTube, I guess. If you compared it like that, it's still kind of early days.
Yeah. Yeah, for
But
sure.
yes, I think I found you on iTunes searching small businesses and startups. You drill down quite a lot in the subcategories, can't you?
Yeah. And one thing, there's this term called pod fade that happens, that where podcasters start a podcast and most of them quit before they get to their 10th episode. So it is amazing.
Absolutely. And you've been going for quite a while, haven't you? You've got lots of regular episodes.
We are in our 3rd year for sure.
Yes.
And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So give me your best elevator, in British vernacular, give me your best lift pitch. As we're going to jump on the lift, we're going to go up 10 floors, and you got about 40 seconds of my attention as a potential client. Give me your the best pitch you have.
Okay, so the time is now. The time is now to start increasing your visibility, growing your brand, getting your message out there. You no longer want to be the best kept secret, and podcast interviews are the way to get your message heard. They are the way to build connections with hosts. They build know, like, and trust factors. People have you in their ears. It's quite intimate medium. They build authority. When people Google you, you're going to come up as a guest on all these shows. There's longevity to being a podcast guest. People can hear you 8 months, a year after you recorded that episode. They can listen to you, they can get to know you, and they often come to the calls pre-sold. So now's the time to get in with podcast interviews.
See, you sold me. I'm taking your business card as I stepped off the lift right there. So yeah,
Excellent.
I'm signing up for the service. So it's still relatively early days, but what do you think is kind of the lifetime or the average, amount of time that a client will be with you in your service? I mean, how long do you think they'll stay?
It varies. We've had the client I talked about who just took me on to book a few to promote his book. We've just kept going and going when he's had different things to promote, because he's seen the benefits, the SEO benefits. Traffic comes through from the links from the podcast, or he's got a new workshop to promote. I would say I've had authors who will come for 6 months because they want to really just focus around a book launch.
Right.
But if it's someone who's growing their business, often they just keep coming back because the benefits accumulate like a snowball.
Is your pricing structure, your pricing model, or whatever, is it kind of front end loaded? There's a lot of work on the front end for you, that, setting up the 1-page bio, really getting to know the client, drilling down on what types of podcasts it might be good. And then as time goes on, it's just almost like a kind of a rinse and repeat, type thing. But so if you have people that are just in and out in a month, I would think that you would almost need to have a setup fee almost, and then maybe a monthly recurring charge or something like that. I don't know what the structure is.
Well, yes, we do need to do that. Our minimum sort of contract at the moment is 3 months. And yes, we wrap everything up in that at the moment. But yes, I think just recurring, then we would reduce it when clients, we knock a bit off if they renew, because they don't, like you say, they've got the one sheet.
Right.
It's not so much. They get a discount when they subsequently renew.
Now you talked a little bit or a lot on your lift pitch or your elevator pitch about kind of the front end benefits of podcasting. Okay. What about the back end? What about the output side of things? Do you also talk to clients about content that you produced, or how to utilize content, or that type of thing?
We do, because I didn't mention that, did I? Because when you're a guest on podcasts,
well, it was a short ride on the elevator, so
it was. But you have this constant stream of fresh content that you can repurpose. For some of our bigger contracts, we do include transcripts of the podcast, because obviously you've got the video, you've got the audio, you can share it across your channels. You can make social media posts from snatches of the interview that will keep you going. You can repurpose it as a blog on your site. there's just so much. It's so valuable. So if you're struggling to come up with content across your platforms, this is a really simple way to solve it too, because every interviewer will kind of ask you something and it will bring out answers in a different way that maybe you hadn't thought of before.
Yeah.
So it is fresh content, and it's quite an easy way to get it.
So do you also do any like kind of tertiary services as well? Like, I mean, you said you will do a transcription, but is there you do any marketing, you do any like social media sharing, that type of thing with content?
As part of our packages at the moment, we do share the posts. So we find some hosts provide us with graphics and example posts that we can use. But for those that don't, we create them for our clients.
Right.
And we will either post them to their platforms to promote their interviews when they go out, or we'll liaise if they have a social media manager or a VA. We liaise with them, give them the posts, make sure they know the dates that they're due to promote them, and so they can kind of maximize it. And it's a win for the host and the guest then, because it's in everyone's interest to share it as widely as possible, isn't it?
Hey, just an FYI, when this episode goes live, you will have a social sharing card I'll send you, so you can promote this. So
fantastic. Thank you.
How do you think COVID has affected like just the general psyche of business owners and those that want to promote their own brand? I mean, have you seen an uptick? Have you seen a kind of a kind of a holding pattern a little bit? They're a little uncertain. I mean, what do you see in the last 12 months?
So when it hit last March, we had a couple of clients who just kind of froze everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then but at the same time, we were getting new clients who were looking for other ways to get their messages out there when things like their speaking opportunities had stopped. And I found that the clients who did kind of freeze have come back and are now maybe more focused on other ways to promote their business when conferences haven't been happening, or virtual. So I think it's maybe shown that you just need lots of different ways to promote your business, to grow your brand, and audio's quite good. It's it can continue when there's lockdowns and everything. You can use something you can still keep going with.
So you mentioned audio. Do you, and you said that they would have video content generally as well. I mean, if it's a Zoom call or something like that, do you also promote this over YouTube, or are there any other video platforms that you utilize, or is this primarily just kind of audio podcasts?
It's kind of primarily audio, I would say, but actually more hosts are using the video, aren't they? We've been finding quite a lot. We'll even use clips or so
LinkedIn,
it depends.
Instagram, Twitter,
exactly. So it depends on where our clients are focused on, where their channels are, because they don't all have all of them, but we encourage them to share the video, to share the audio, to just repurpose it in as many ways as they can.
Right.
But we also advise them to check, or we check, if it's going to be video, so that you are prepared and you don't kind of show up in your pajamas thinking it's just going to be audio, and make sure that they've got the right equipment, have an external web camera, because I think so many are kind of shows now, aren't they? They're, a lot of hosts will use the video on their YouTube channel and also the audio on iTunes and across the social media
Absolutely.
platforms.
And I mean, a relatively inexpensive camera can make a huge difference, and like a LED light, in front of, as to kind of light up the, your face as you're on camera. But outside of COVID, I mean, what I've noticed in the last, say, 18 to 24 months is that it's even the business climate has changed, and like people that might not have been as ready to kind of go out on their own, this has almost forced their hand a little bit.
Absolutely.
And I've seen a real uptick in people that are, say, walking out of the cubicle and stepping out and doing things on their own. Have you noticed the same thing?
I've noticed that people who maybe would have been more hesitant to do podcasts, they seem keener. They're used to Zoom. They're used to doing conferences at work now. So it's that kind of, our lives have changed, haven't they? We've had to get used to the technology. So it maybe makes it less of a leap actually, maybe I could do that. I do Zoom now. That kind of thing. I'm used to talking in meetings.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I was in a meeting at my day job. I lead a team in
Okay.
the corporate world, and we were sitting there in one of our team meetings, and I said, "Okay, imagine if I would have told you 12 months ago that the world was going to hit a global pause button. We were going to be working remotely. We're all going to be doing Zoom meetings or Microsoft Teams or whatever the medium is. You would have thought I was crazy." That we're going to have
Oh,
a global pandemic that's going to hit, but
absolutely.
that's exactly what's happened in the last 12 months. And
Yeah.
it has changed our world, never to
Mm,
return. It's not like we're
no,
going to go back to that normal again, because there will be a
no,
new normal. And, we
absolutely.
need to adjust to that.
Yeah. We found, so we're on the coast here, but houses are being snapped up. And I think that there's a lot of people who may have been based in London,
Yep.
and they had to, and they're not going to be returning to work in the
Yep.
same way. And so you can choose maybe more where you want to live. If you're going to be allowed to work from home, a lot of big companies have let their big premises go, haven't they? And they're
Mm.
looking at smaller ones. I know my husband's company, they're architects and they're kind of based all over, and they've let go some offices, they've downsized. Everyone's got laptops, they're set up. They will have some office space still, but it's going to be reduced
Yeah.
significantly.
I mean, companies that were probably highly reluctant to work remotely or distributed
Yeah,
have found out, well, actually, we can pull this off, and
that's
we don't
right.
need our, large brick and mortar, you know,
Yeah, that's
structure, the
huge overheads, aren't they,
cathedral
that
that
they
we
can
built,
reduce?
for our company,
Yeah,
that we can get away without that. And I mean, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely huge overhead, expense that can be saved. Now the problem is we have these buildings all over the globe, and like, what are we going to do with them? All these, I
Absolutely.
mean, the cities are full
I
of
know.
office buildings.
Absolutely. I mean, I do wonder, I haven't been up to London obviously since, but I wonder what the city's like. Probably a ghost town. And
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting how things change, like you say, those big buildings, and I wonder what they will do with them.
And I mean, even companies that might have had, 5 or 6 different floors of a large building, they may say, well,
Mhm.
actually, we only need one, so
Yeah.
now the other 4 are
Yeah.
going to be vacant or whatever. But it is
Right.
interesting to look not
Hmm.
just at the the geography of where people work, but like even the way that they work,
Hmm.
the is we're not it's not 9 to 5 so much
No,
anymore.
that's
It's a lot
true as
more
well.
kind of working around your own schedule. It's more project
Hmm.
driven versus time driven. It's
Yes.
asynchronous, across the globe. I mean, we work with
Yeah.
people literally all over the planet.
That's it.
And with
Absolutely.
and thankfully generally the common business language is English, so for you and I, that makes it a lot easier to
Yeah,
to
that's okay for
communicate
us.
with people all over the world. So
Yeah.
I'm curious. We've touched on a lot of things. Is there anything that we haven't really touched on that you've, once you've
Mhm.
launched your business, that lessons learned, or things, if you go back 12 to 18 months, think, boy, I really wish I would have known that then. This thing I know now, I wish I'd have known that then. Would have made life so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we talked about earlier, the thing about just not trying to do too many things, not trying to
Hmm.
offer too many services, just focusing on one and doing one well. I think if I'd have known that earlier, I think I could have progressed faster. Yeah, so I'd wish I'd known that.
But do you think it would have been more difficult to launch or to grow early? Because I think that's the big
Hmm.
fear of most, startups, is
True.
there, if I niche down, I mean, right now I've got to get business through the door somehow. I mean,
Yes.
I'll do anything for anybody for about any price, and I'll figure that
Yes.
out later. But I think it's great
Absolutely.
advice, but I think that's a
Yeah.
huge fear.
It is. And I was really worried about that. And I watched a webinar, and I can't remember who it was by, but it was somebody in my business group. And she said, you can still take on the other work, just you just don't have to promote it on your website. You can
Mm.
still do it if you feel that you need the
Mm-hmm.
income
Yeah.
while you're growing it, but just don't promote it in the same way. just really push the one thing to be known for.
So you've used the term "we" at different times. Walk us through what is Victoria Bennion Incorporated look like?
At the moment, it's me, and then I have contractors who I work with as and when. So very virtual team.
Right. See, you're ahead of the curve. You probably would have done that anyway. I mean, I would think.
Yeah, probably
even
I
without
would.
COVID.
I probably would, because that was one of the things about, being your own boss, having your own business, that I liked the idea of that. I wasn't going into an office 9 to 5 every day. I've got 2 children, and I like to be able to work around that, and get the support I need, for the business that way. So I think, yes, it's worked out well.
So give me your moonshot vision. So what is vc.com or vb.com going? What's that going to look like in 3 to 5 years?
Well, I hope it's a much more substantial business, with maybe more permanent members of staff, but virtually based, so that we can, and I just want to continue to improve our service that we offer, people, to help increase their visibility. I hope to have helped a lot more businesses grow their brands through podcasting.
Are you seeing a lot of people try to get into that line of service, as that
in offering podcast bookings?
Yeah, you're right.
I think there's a few. I don't think, if you were to look at sort of social media managers, it's nothing. But it's definitely growing, because I think there's a demand for it among clients, and I think some PR agencies are adding it onto their books too. So yeah, I think it's something that will increase. I think there'll be more and more people as time goes on.
So are you trying to work with agencies that have kind of a more of a broad service offering, and you're like, let us provide the kind of the podcast booking portion of your larger portfolio of services?
I haven't yet, but it's on my list. I would definitely like to offer that and see if it's something we can help with.
I think there's certainly a kind of a niche there that is kind of untapped, and I think a lot of agencies don't even think about it. I mean, booking on podcasts is not even in their thought process, and I think you're right. I think it's a new but growing opportunity, and people are really starting to understand and appreciate the value of, I think, coming on podcasts. So I'm anxious to see what's how it's going to grow in the next few years, and really appreciate you just taking the time right as you're heading into your weekend, and you get to spend a little family time this weekend. But Victoria, is there anything that we haven't asked you about that you just want to close us out with today, and then just close out with letting people know where the best place to find you online?
Okay, well, the best place to find me online is victoriabennion.com.
Right there at the website.
Right there at the website. And then
we will have that in the show notes. And want to just tell you once again, thank you for taking your time and really just helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Victoria, have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. Thank you very much for having me, Kevin.
Another episode in the books. We hope you heard some great takeaways. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on iTunes and YouTube. As always, thanks for listening to Rising Tide.